The battlefield was silent for a heartbeat. Then the silence broke with the sound of metal boots striking the ground as the enemy line closed in dust rising with every step. Kyla stood in the middle of it all, her chest heaving, her arms trembling. Her once strong spear cracked down the center, a jagged splinter running through it. She was tired, hurt, and bleeding, but her eyes still burned with fire. She had fought too long to give up now. Her squad was gone, scattered across the ground like broken, and toys the sand stained dark with their blood. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out, only the sharp taste of fear and iron in her mouth. The enemy ring tightened around her, dozens of armored soldiers forming a circle. Every weapon aimed at her. Each step they took made the air heavy, her throat dry. Escape was impossible. The commander stepped forward, his armor black as the night sky, his helmet shaped like the head of some cruel beast, his sword long and curved, glowing faintly with a deadly energy. His voice came through the mask, cold and final. Surrender, warrior. Your fight is over. Kyla gripped the broken spear with both hands. She could feel the splinters digging into her palms. She raised it anyway. She knew it would not hold against another strike, but it was all she had. She thought of her people, her home. She thought of the oath she swore never to kneel, never to let fear steal her honor. If this was the end, she would meet it standing. The soldiers laughed, a low, cruel sound. One of them stepped closer, his blade flashing in the sun. Kayla's legs shook, but she stood firm. Her mind screamed for her to move, to fight, to survive, but her body was near its limit. Her heart thundered so loudly she almost missed the sound that followed. A roar from above. The sky itself seemed to tear apart. The air shuddered as something blazed down through the clouds, fire trailing behind it. A streak of light crashing toward the battlefield. The enemy froze, even the commander tilted his head upward, every eye locked on the falling shape. Kyla's lips parted, but no words came. The object grew larger, louder, until it slammed into the earth with a thunderous crash. The ground shook like the world itself had been struck. Dust and smoke burst into the air, blinding everyone for a moment. The ring of soldiers stumbled, shields raised against the sudden storm. Kayla coughed, choking on the dust. She squinted through the haze. Something was moving inside the crater, slow at first, then rising. Tall, a figure pushing up through smoke and broken stone. Her heart skipped. She had never seen anything like it. The dust began to clear, and the figure became visible. It was no machine, no beast. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his armor battered, but strong, his face partly hidden by a cracked visor. His eyes, however, glowed with sharp focus and calm. Even in the chaos he stood, as if the entire battlefield belonged to him. The soldiers shifted in confusion, whispers moving through their ranks. The commander's grip on his sword tightened, but even he hesitated for a breath. The man looked around then at Kyla, his expression unreadable, his voice steady, cutting through the smoke mind. If I join the fight. For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Kayla's body trembled, not just with exhaustion now, but with disbelief. A human, she thought, but that was impossible. Humans were not supposed to exist. Not here, not now. They were stories, myths, shadows of an ancient past. Yet here, one stood right before her. The enemy commander snarled, raising his blade. Kill him. The circle of soldiers closed again, but this time their steps were slower, less certain. Kyla could see it in their eyes. Confusion, fear. She herself felt the same, but mixed with something else, hope, thin, fragile, but real. The man cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and without waiting for an answer, he charged. The first soldier raised his weapon, but the man moved faster than Kyla could follow. His fist struck. With a sound like breaking stone, the soldier flew back, crashing into two others' weapons, clattering to the dirt. The man turned fluidly, grabbing another soldier's arm, twisting, snapping, and tossing him aside like nothing. Kyla's mouth hung open. She had seen great warriors. She had fought beside the bravest of her people, but never had she seen strength like this, raw, unshaken, unstoppable. The enemy tried to rally blades, flashing spears, thrusting. but the man weaved between them every strike. Precise, brutal, efficient, his movements carried no hesitation, no wasted effort. Every blow put someone down. Kyla forgot her broken spear for a moment, her eyes wide as she followed him, her breath shallow. He was fighting for her, fighting beside her, though he did not even know her name. The commander roared his blade, blazing with energy, as he lunged at the man. The strike cut through the air with deadly force. Kayla shouted a warning, but the man turned at the last moment, catching the blow on. His forearm armor screeching sparks, flying instead of falling. He pushed forward, forcing the commander back, step by step. The ground cracked beneath their struggle. Kayla could barely believe what she saw. No one had ever stood against that commander, and lived, yet this stranger did it, without fear, his teeth bared in a grim smile. The soldiers hesitated, their formation breaking the circle, weakening. The man slammed his shoulder into the commander, knocking him off balance. He spun with a kick that sent another soldier crashing to the dirt, the sound of breaking armor echoing. Kayla's heart pounded faster with each passing second, her exhaustion fading in the rush of disbelief and wonder. For the first time since the battle began, she felt she might survive, she might live to fight again. Still the enemy pressed in, too many to count. Kayla raised her broken spear again, forcing her body to move. She would not stand idle while another fought for her. She struck at the closest soldier, surprising him with the sudden burst of resistance. Her weapon shattered completely, but the sharp end pierced through his arm, sending him screaming back. The man glanced at her for a moment, and in his eyes she saw something strange. Approval, respect. He nodded. Once then turned back to the fight. The battlefield was chaos now. Dust, smoke, screams, the clash of steel, and the roar of battle. Kyla moved closer to the stranger, her broken weapon replaced by a sword. She grabbed from the ground together. They stood, back to back against the tide. She had never fought in sync with someone so naturally. Every step, every strike flowed, as if they had trained together for years. The enemy numbers began to thin, fear spreading through their ranks. But Kayla knew it was not over. Not yet. The commander still stood, and his fury was growing. She could see it in his posture, his movements more desperate, more violent. The man fought on, taking blows that should have dropped him, but each time he only grew stronger. Kayla gasped as one strike pierced his armor, blood spraying across the dust. Yet he did not fall. He only turned his head, eyes burning brighter. She realized then he was not just strong. He was something more, something beyond what she understood. And that terrified her as much as it gave her hope. The commander raised his blade once more, gathering all his strength. Kyla felt the ground shake beneath his power. She raised her own sword, ready to meet it. But before she could, the man stepped forward, placing himself between her and the strike, his voice calm even as the enemy roared. "Come on, then." The clash lit the battlefield with blinding light. Kayla shielded her eyes, her heart hammering in her chest when she looked again. Dust swirled around, in them the outcome hidden, and in that suspended moment, Kayla knew her life would never be the same again. The dust was thick, the air burned with the smell of metal and fire. Kayla blinked, her eyes stung, her chest rose and fell fast. The battlefield around her was still, but not silent. Blades clattered on the ground. Soldiers groaned and dragged themselves away, some too afraid to come closer. The circle that once trapped her was broken. In the center stood the stranger, the human. His shoulders lifted and lowered in a steady rhythm, as if the fight had not touched him. Though his armor was cut and smoking, his stance was firm. His hand rested at his side, and the curved blade of the enemy commander hung half-buried in the dirt before him. The commander staggered back, both hands trembling around the hilt. His mask cracked, his voice a ragged hiss. "Impossible. No one can stand against me." The man tilted his head slightly, his voice low and calm. "Not no one." Kayla stared, her legs weak, her mind Racing, she wanted to ask 100 questions, but none of them formed. The only thought she had was that this man should not exist. Her people spoke of humans only in stories and whispers. Humans had burned bright long ago, then vanished into dust. Yet here he was, standing in front of her like some ghost pulled from legend. The commander roared, his pride wounded. He lunged again. Kayla gasped, but the human moved before she could blink. His hand caught the commander's wrist, twisted, until the blade fell. The commander screamed and dropped to his knees. The human's other hand shot forward, striking the chest plate. The armor cracked with a sound like thunder, and the commander hit the ground flat and still. The ring of soldiers froze none. Dared move, the silence stretched long, heavy and suffocating. Kayla could hear her own pulse louder than the wind. The human looked around, his gaze sweeping over the enemy, his tone even and cold. Anyone else want to try? Not a soul stepped forward. The soldiers began to step back slowly, one by one, until the ring broke fully. They lifted their wounded, dragged their fallen, and slipped into the shadows like smoke chased by wind. No shouts, no cries, only fear written in their retreat. Kayla sank to her knees, the broken pieces of her spear falling beside her. She let out a breath that shook her whole body. Her hands trembled from exhaustion and shock, yet she could not look away from him. He had done what no one else could. He had turned certain death into survival. The man walked toward her, his boots crunching softly on broken stone. He stopped a few steps away, his shadow falling over her, his voice softer. "Now you are still alive," Kayla forced her voice to work her throat dry. "Who are you?" He paused, then gave a faint smile. "Name's Elias." She repeated it softly, as if testing the sound. Elias, the word felt strange yet strong. She pushed herself to her feet, swaying. He reached out a steady hand. Without hesitation, she took it. His grip was strong, warm, real. It grounded her in a way that surprised her. She looked up into his eyes and found no arrogance, only calm and something else, something unreadable. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Humans do not walk these lands." Elias's smile faded. His eyes shifted to the horizon, where smoke rose in dark columns. "Long story one you may not believe." Kayla's chest tightened with unease. She had heard the legends. She had heard the warnings humans had. Been warriors of fire and shadow, both feared and admired. Their fall had shaken the stars themselves. And now one stood before her. Before she could speak further, the ground shook. A distant rumble rolled across the battlefield. She turned, eyes wide. Reinforcements. The enemy would not give up so easily. Elias nodded, his gaze narrowing. "Then we should move." Kayla wanted to argue. Her body screamed for rest. Her wounds ached every step, but she knew he was right. If they stayed, they would be crushed. She nodded, grabbed a fallen sword from the dirt, and followed him. They left the battlefield, moving through jagged hills and broken stone, the sky darkening above with heavy clouds. Kayla glanced at Elias more than once. His stride never faltered. Even wounded, his steps were steady, his head turning now and then, scanning the shadows, always alert. After a long silence, she asked again, "Where did you come from?" He gave no answer for a while, then finally from a place far above, a place forgotten. Kayla frowned, not understanding, but the weight in his voice told her not to press further. She bit her lip, her mind filled with more questions than she could count, yet she kept them inside. The rumble behind them grew louder. Kayla's stomach clenched. They were being followed. Elias must have felt it too, for he suddenly stopped, raising a hand. "Stay low." She crouched near a boulder, gripping her sword tight. Her breath, shallow shapes moved in the distance, tall figures, armored hunters, elite killers. Sent only when victory had to be certain. Kayla's chest tightened. She whispered, "They will not stop until we are dead." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we do not let them." He stepped forward, drawing in a deep breath, his armor sparking faintly with some hidden power. Kayla felt her heart race. She did not know what he was planning, but she knew the fight was far from over. The hunters fanned out their weapons, glowing with energy. The air hummed. Kyla swallowed hard, her fingers slick with sweat. She had faced many enemies, but these were different, relentless, merciless. Her legs shook, yet she forced herself to stand beside him. Elias glanced at her only once, his voice calm, "Stay close." The hunters raised their weapons, the night lit with sharp light. And in that instant, the world seemed to hold still. Kyla's pulse pounded in her ears. She felt fear, but also something new rising inside her, a fragile spark of belief. The clash came, sudden, brutal. The first hunter lunged. Elias moved faster than sight, his fist meeting metal. The ground shook with the impact. Kayla screamed and swung her sword, striking another hunter across the shoulder, sparks flying. The battle raged in the dark stone dust, and fire all around. Kayla fought desperately, each strike pushing her body past its limit. Every breath felt like her last. Yet Elias never slowed, never faltered. He moved with precision, every strike dropping another hunter. His strength endless, his calm unbroken. Still the numbers pressed. The hunters came in waves. Kayla's arm burned, her vision blurred. She staggered, a blade cutting across her side. Pain flared hot. She stumbled, but before the killing blow came, Elias was there, catching the strike with his bare hand, crushing the weapon like brittle glass. His eyes blazed with fury. He turned, his voice a growl enough. With a surge of power, his armor lit bright. The hunters froze for half a breath, then chaos erupted. Elias moved like a storm, tearing through them, his strikes final, unstoppable. The ground split beneath the force of his attacks. Kayla could only watch, stunned her mind, unable to grasp the scale of his strength. Within moments, the hunters lay broken. The night silent again. Elias stood in the center, his chest heaving, his armor cracked, but his body unyielding, his gaze distant as if staring into a memory. Kayla stepped forward, her voice shaky. "What are you?" His eyes turned to her, the glow fading, his voice quiet. "I am human." Kyla's breath caught. Humans were not supposed to exist, not here, not anywhere, yet she could not deny what she saw. The fear and awe twisted inside her until she whispered, "But humans are gone." Elias looked away, his jaw tight. "Maybe not as gone as they want you to believe." Before she could ask more, the horizon flared bright, more lights rising in the distance, more soldiers, more danger. Kayla's heart sank. There would be no rest, no time. The enemy wanted them both gone. Elias looked back at her, his tone steady. "We keep moving, and when the time comes, you will see the truth." Kayla swallowed her fear, gripped her sword, and nodded. She did not understand him, not yet. But she knew one thing: he had saved her, and in this broken world, that meant more than any answer. Together, they slipped into the shadows of the night, the sound of pursuit behind them, the weight of mystery ahead. Kayla's mind raced with questions, her body ached with exhaustion, but one thought rose above all others. The human had come from the sky, and nothing would ever be the same again. The night was heavy with silence, but Kayla could not rest. Every step felt like walking deeper into a storm. Her side ached where the hunter blade had cut her. Her legs shook, yet she forced herself to move. Elias walked ahead, steady, as ever, his shoulders broad, his movements calm. He looked as if the battle behind them had taken nothing from him. The land stretched dark and broken, jagged rocks, and the skeletons of old ruins casting long shadows. Kayla kept glancing at him, her mind spinning with questions. She wanted to demand answers, but his face gave nothing away. His eyes kept scanning the horizon like a predator searching for danger. At last, she could not hold it in anymore. She whispered, "You should not exist." Elias slowed, then looked at her, his expression unreadable, yet his voice calm and even. "I hear that a lot." Kayla felt heat rise in her chest, frustration mixing with fear. "Humans are gone," she said, her voice trembling with certainty. My people tell stories of yore. Again they say you burned too bright, and then vanished into the void that is all. He stopped at a ridge. His gaze on the stars above then answered, stories only carry the pieces. Someone wants you to remember. Not always the truth. Kayla frowned, her grip on the sword tightening. So what is the truth? He turned his eyes toward her for a moment, sharp like blades, before shifting back to the horizon. The truth would break you. The words chilled her. She wanted to push further, but before she could, a sound carried through the night, a low, mechanical hum. Kayla stiffened, crouching behind a stone. Elias raised a hand for silence, his eyes narrowing. From the shadows, a line of lights appeared, drones hovering in the air, each one armed with sharp, bladed limbs, their glowing eyes sweeping across the land. Hunting Kayla's breath quickened. If they were caught in the open, they would not survive. Elias crouched beside her, his voice low. Wait until they pass. Kayla bit her lip hard. The drones drew closer, there, hum deepening every second, stretching long and cruel. Her heart pounded loud in her ears. She feared they would hear it. The light beams swept dangerously close. One passed just a hand's width from her face. She held her breath, praying. Then Elias moved suddenly. His hand shot up, catching a drone mid-flight, crushing it with one fist before it could sound an alarm. Kayla gasped. Another drone turned its sensors toward them, its blades rising. Elias hurled the broken machine at it, knocking it. From the air, sparks bursting like fire. The other drones swarmed instantly. Kayla scrambled to her feet, sword raised, the night lit with red beams. Elias was already moving, tearing through the machines with ruthless efficiency, his fists smashing metal, his boots crushing their frames. Kayla struck at one that veered toward her, the blade sparking as she cut through its limb, but another nearly struck from behind. Elias grabbed it, ripping the drone apart with his bare hands. The air filled with the sound of shattering metal, the smell of smoke. Kayla fought with every ounce of strength she had, but her arms grew heavy, her breath ragged. Elias fought like a storm, never slowing, never hesitating, when the last drone fell in broken pieces around. Then the night fell silent again. Kayla dropped to her knees, chest heaving, sweat dripping into her eyes. She looked at him, disbelief and fear mixing inside her. How are you doing this? No one can fight like that. Elias stood among the broken machines, his armor sparking from cuts, his voice calm. Humans can... She shook her head. No, not like this, not what I was told. Elias's eyes caught the faint moonlight, his tone low and firm. Maybe your people were told only what others wanted them to believe. The weight in his words pressed against her chest. She wanted to deny it, but she could not after what she had seen. He turned away again. Come, we have little time. They moved through the ruins, deeper into the valley. Kayla's steps slow but steady, her mind drowning in questions. She whispered finally, if you are real, if humans are not gone, why are you here? Why now? Elias stopped, his back straight, his voice steady. Because they fear us, and because it is time. Kayla froze, her blood cold. Who fears you? Elias turned his head slightly, his voice low. The ones who hunt us, the ones who rule the stars with chains, they fear what humanity can become. His words were heavy, strange, and yet something inside her believed them. She thought of the way the soldiers fled, the way the hunters hesitated, the way the drones swarmed with such urgency. Perhaps there was truth in his claim. They walked further until the ruins rose high around them. Old stone walls covered in strange carvings. Kayla touched one, running, her fingers along the lines. They looked like her people's symbols, but different, older. She whispered, these ruins are from before, even my ancestors. Elias placed his hand on the stone, his eyes closing for a brief moment. Then he said quietly, not. Your ancestors, ours. Kayla's eyes widened. She stepped back, shaking her head. No, that cannot be. These lands never belonged to humans. Elias looked at her with calm certainty. They did long before your people came, long before these stories were twisted. This was human ground. Her heart raced faster, she wanted to argue, but the weight of his gaze silenced her. Suddenly a crack of sound split the air. Kayla turned, weapons drawn, shadows moved at the edge of the ruins, figures armored dark with glowing visors. The hunters had found them again. Elias stepped forward, shielding her, his stance steady. Kayla felt terror rise hot in her chest, but he spoke with calm certainty. You wanted truth, here it comes. The hunters' advanced weapons raised the ruins. Echoing with their steps, Kayla gripped her sword tighter, her body screaming from fatigue. Yet she stood ready. Elias shifted his weight, his armor sparking faintly, his voice deep-mined. If I fight with you again, Kayla blinked despite the fear, despite the danger. A strange smile touched her lips. Not at all. The hunters roared their charge, shaking the ruins. The night split with the clash. Elias moved like lightning. Kayla close beside him, together they fought, the stone walls ringing with steel, the air thick with dust and fire. Kayla's fear remained, but under it grew something new, not just hope but belief. Belief that with this human beside her, the impossible might be broken, the stars themselves might change. And as the battle raged through the ruins, she realized one truth that chilled and thrilled her in equal measure. This man, Elias, was not simply a fighter. He was a spark that could set the whole galaxy on fire. The ruins were alive with echoes, every clash of steel against stone, every cry of rage from the hunters carried like thunder. Kayla's arms shook, her breath came ragged, her vision blurred, yet she refused to fall. Elias fought ahead of her, a wall of strength, his movements sharp, fast, precise, like every step had already been written long before the battle began. The hunters pressed hard, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Kayla swung her sword, blocking one blow, sparks flying. The impact jolted through her bones. She staggered, nearly falling. Another hunter closed in, but Elias caught him by the throat, lifting and slamming him into the ground. The stone cracked with the force. The enemy did not rise again. Kayla gasped, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. She thought she would collapse, but when she looked at Elias, something inside her refused. He fought like he carried the weight of 1,000 battles, his fists crushing metal, his voice silent, but his presence louder than war itself. She found herself moving again, her broken body, obeying the rhythm he set. The hunters regrouped, forming a line, their visors glowing red. One raised a signal flare, light bursting high into the night. Kayla's chest tightened. She understood reinforcements were coming. They meant to trap them here and finish the fight. Elias cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the ruins. We cannot stay here. They will bury us in numbers. Kayla clenched her teeth. Where can we run? They will follow. He turned his gaze to the carvings etched into the walls, old symbols glowing faintly in the flare light. His voice low but firm down below. These ruins are not empty. They are a doorway. Kayla froze, confusion mixing with fear. A doorway to what? Elias gave no answer. Instead, he smashed his fist into the stone floor. Cracking it open, a hollow echo followed, dust and rock falling away to reveal a stairwell leading into darkness. Kayla's stomach twisted, but she knew the hunters would not stop. Her choice was clear. She nodded, her grip tight on her sword lead. Where Elias dropped into the darkness without hesitation. Kayla followed the cold air below, wrapped around her like water, her feet hitting stone steps, slick with age behind them. The hunters shouted, their voices echoing as they gave chase. The stairwell spiraled downward, deeper and deeper. Kayla's legs screamed, but she pushed on. Elias moved ahead, his steps sure as if he had walked this path before. She dared to whisper, "You know this place, don't you?" He did not look back. His answer carried calm. Certainty, yes. Before she could ask how, the stairwell opened into a vast chamber. Torches, long, dead-lined the walls. Strange machines, half buried in dust and stone, glowed faintly with blue light. Kayla stopped, her breath catching. This place is human Elias's. Eyes swept the room, scanning every detail. His jaw tight. It was ours once. The hunters poured in behind them, their shouts filling the chamber. Elias raised his fists. Kyla lifted her sword. The battle crashed again in the depths of the ruins. The sound of combat shook the chamber machines, hummed alive, as if feeding on the chaos. Kayla's sword struck through armor sparks, blinding her. Elias's fists cracked helmets and tore weapons apart. But for every hunter they felled, two more pressed forward. The air thick with heat, and blood. Kayla's legs wavered. Her wounds burned. One hunter nearly cut her down, until Elias shoved her aside, taking the strike across his shoulder. His armor split metal, glowing red, but he stood unbroken with a growl. He smashed the hunter back, sending him crashing into a wall. Kayla shouted, "You will die if you keep taking hits like that." Elias only answered, "I cannot die yet." Before she could respond, the chamber shook, a deep rumble rolling through the floor. Kayla staggered. Grabbing a pillar, dust rained from the ceiling. The old machines lit brighter symbols along the walls, glowing with strange energy. Elias's eyes widened. The ruins awaking. The hunters paused, some stepping back, unease in their movements. Kayla felt the air vibrate, a pulse in her chest like a heartbeat, not her own. She looked around, terrified. Elias's voice cut through steady calm. "This place remembers." As Kayla's breath caught fear and awe twisting inside her, she whispered, "What are you?" Elias glanced at her, sweat streaking his face, his tone grave. "I am what they tried to erase." Before she could ask more, the chamber erupted, a pillar of light shooting upward, throwing hunters across the floor. Kayla shielded her eyes. The sound of 1,000 whispers filled the air, a voice not human, not alien, but something old, speaking in a language she did not understand, yet somehow felt in her bones. Elias stepped forward, his body bathed in the glow. Kayla saw the hunters hesitate there, weapons lowering, fear flashing even behind their masks. Elias turned to her, his eyes glowing faintly now. "This is the truth, Kayla. Your people never knew. Humanity did not vanish. We went deeper. We became something else." Kayla's legs trembled. Her sword slipped from her hand. She could not breathe. Her entire life, her people's history, all the stories felt like lies burning away in an instant. Yet she could not look away from him. The hunters roared, desperate, pushing forward again, trying to cut them down before the ruins fully awakened. Elias met them head-on, his strikes faster, stronger. The light of the ruins coursing through him. Kayla found her strength returning. She picked up her sword again and joined him, though her body cried. For rest, she fought with him side by side. Together they pushed the hunters back, the chamber shaking with every clash, dust falling from above. The ruins humming louder as if cheering them on one by one. The hunters fell, broken, their blood mixing with the ancient dust, until at last the chamber was silent. Kayla collapsed to her knees, gasping. Elias stood above her, his armor cracked, glowing faint, his chest heaving. He looked not like a man, but something more. "Something impossible," she whispered. "You are not only human." He looked down at her, his eyes still glowing, his voice low and heavy. "I am the beginning of what humanity is becoming." The ruins pulsed again, the machines thrumming alive, the chamber vibrating. Kayla pressed her hands to her ears as the sound grew louder. Elias raised his head, as if listening to something no one else could hear. His jaw set, his eyes sharp. Kayla's voice shook. "What is happening?" He turned to her, the light burning across his face. "A signal." He said, "They will come." Kayla's stomach dropped. "Who will come?" Elias's voice carried both warning and promise. "Humanity." The chamber roared with light, brighter than the sun. Kayla cried out, covering her face when the glow faded. She looked around in shock. Hunters were gone. Their bodies turned to dust. The machines silent once more. The only sound, her ragged breath and the slow echo of Elias's footsteps as he walked toward her. He knelt, steady, his voice softer. "Now, you fought well, Kayla. You have seen." Too much to turn back now. Kayla stared at him, her hands trembling. What happens next? Elias's eyes burned with quiet fire. Now we survive until they arrive. Kayla swallowed hard, her fear twisting into something else. Resolve. She lifted her sword again, her body still shaking but her voice steady. Then I will not leave your side. Elias gave the faintest smile, his gaze on the endless darkness beyond the chamber. Good, because the hardest part is still ahead. The ruins whispered again, faint, low, and haunting, as if promising both doom and salvation. Kayla felt the weight of the moment pressing down. She knew the galaxy she thought she understood had already changed, and it had only just begun. The chamber was still, but Kayla's heart was not. She could hear it thundering inside her chest. The light that had filled the ruins still burned faintly in the walls, blue lines running like veins across the stone. Elias stood in the center. His armor cracked his face, shadowed his eyes, carrying that same fire that made her afraid and yet unwilling to look away. Kayla pushed herself up, her legs weak, her body trembling from blood loss and exhaustion. She wanted to rest, to let her eyes close. But the silence pressed on her nerves. She whispered, "What was that? What did these ruins do?" Elias touched one of the glowing lines, his voice calm but heavy. They woke up. They remembered. Us. Kayla swallowed her throat dry. "Us, you mean humans?" He nodded, his eyes still on the light. "We built this place long before your people walked these lands. We left it hidden for the day we might return." Kayla's mind reeled. The thought of humans building such wonders before her people even existed shook her entire understanding of history. Everything she had been taught felt like dust, lies wrapped as truth. Before she could speak, the ground rumbled again, dust falling from the ceiling. Elias's head snapped up, his jaw tight. "They are coming, more of them." Kayla's stomach sank. "More hunters." "Not hunters," Elias said, worse. From the stairwell above came the sound of metal boots, many boots, the air filled with the low hum of engines. Kayla's grip tightened on her sword, fear clawing at her chest. She turned to Elias, her voice breaking. "How do we fight them?" Elias looked back at her, his tone calm, the same way it always was. "We do not fight all of them, not yet. We move." He crossed the chamber to a stone door, half buried in the wall, pressing his hand to the carvings. The lines of light shifted like water. The door split open, dust billowing out. Kayla hesitated. The dark tunnel beyond looked endless, but the sound from the stairwell grew louder. She followed. The tunnel twisted down deep into the earth, each step echoing the air colder, heavier. Kayla's breathing quick. Elias walked ahead, his stride steady, though his wounds bled through his armor. She wanted to ask if he was in pain, but she knew what he would say. "Not yet." After long silence, Kayla spoke softly. "Elias," he glanced back. "Yes, you said humans did not vanish. You said they became something else. What did you mean?" He slowed for a moment, then kept walking, his voice. "Even we were broken, but we were never gone. Some of us hid. Some of us changed. Some of us built places like this, waiting for a time when we could rise again." Kayla hugged her arms to her chest, rise against who Elias's eyes met hers for a breath. His answer made her blood turn cold against those who chained the stars before she could ask more. The tunnel widened into another chamber larger than the last, a circular room lined with black stone and machines that pulsed with faint blue light. In the center rose a tall pillar carved with symbols glowing faintly like the heartbeat of something alive. Elias stepped toward it. Kayla followed her steps slow, her voice hushed. "What is it?" He placed his hand on the stone. The glow spread brighter, the room humming. "This is a beacon, a beacon." Kayla repeated, her voice trembling. "What does it call?" Elias turned his head slightly toward her. "Us." Kayla's mouth went dry. "You mean more humans?" "Yes," he said simply. The weight of his words pressed hard on her chest. She thought of the hunters, the soldiers, the endless pursuit. If more like him came, what would happen to the galaxy? Her thoughts broke when a roar shook the chamber, the stone above cracking. Kayla gasped. The enemy had followed faster than she imagined, armored troops dropping into the chamber. Weapons raised their visors glowing. Redelius pulled his hand back from the beacon, his body shifting into a ready stance, his voice firm stand with. Michaela lifted her sword, her body screaming, but her spirit refusing to bow. She nodded without hesitation. The soldiers charged their blades, and rifles lighting the dark. Elias met them head on his fist, smashing the first helmet like glass, his kick sending another flying. Kayla followed, striking fast, though every swing burned her arms, sparks flying with each clash. The fight was chaos. The air thick with dust, screams, and fire. Kayla ducked a strike, barely missing her head. She slashed upward, cutting through an arm, the soldier falling back. Elias tore through three at once, his movements brutal, efficient, his voice silent, but his presence loud enough to fill the chamber. Still more poured in. Kayla's legs faltered, her wounds bled freely. One soldier slammed her back against the pillar, her sword slipping from her grasp. He raised his blade for the killing strike. She closed her eyes, but the strike never came. Elias's hand caught the blade mid-swing, crushing it to shards. His other fist sent the soldier crashing across the chamber. Kayla gasped, clutching her chest. Elias pulled her to her feet, his voice steady. "You are not done yet." Her hands shook, but she nodded, picking up her sword again. Her fear burned into something harder. She swung again, fighting at his side. The chamber shook with every strike, the beacon glowing brighter, pulsing faster, as if feeding on their struggle. At last, the last soldier fell. The silence returning, broken only by the heavy sound of their breathing. Kayla leaned against the pillar, her chest heaving. Elias stood in the glow, blood dripping down his arm, his eyes sharp, his voice low. "They will not stop. They will keep coming until this beacon completes its call." Kayla wiped blood from her face, her voice hoarse. "How long?" Elias looked at the glowing lines, his tone grave. "Long enough for us to die, if we are not ready." Kayla felt the weight of his words pressed down, but she lifted her chin, her voice trembling yet firm. "Then we will be ready." Elias's eyes softened faintly for the first time since she met him. He nodded good. The beacon pulsed brighter, brighter, until the entire chamber glowed. Kayla shielded her eyes, the hum growing into a roar. She felt it inside her bones, a call rushing out into the stars. Elias stood tall in the center of the light, his voice carrying over the storm. "Humanity, hear us." Kayla gasped as the light exploded upward through the cracks in the ruins, piercing the sky above the ground, shaking the sound, echoing far across the land. When the glow faded, Kayla looked at Elias, fear and awe twisting inside her. "What have you done?" Elias turned his eyes, burning with both promise and warning. "I have told them we are still here." Kayla's knees weakened. She dropped to the floor, her mind spinning. She whispered softly, "Then the galaxy will burn." Elias stood silent for a long moment, then answered, "Maybe. But first it will wake." The ruins groaned again, dust falling like rain. Kayla knew more enemies would come, stronger than before, yet she felt something new deep inside, a spark, a fragile belief. She looked at Elias, his silhouette lit by the fading glow, and realized she was already part of this truth, part of a story that would change everything. And as the darkness returned, she whispered to herself, "And maybe, just maybe, that is what the galaxy needs." The ruins shook with a deep rumble, the walls vibrating like a giant heartbeat. Kayla pressed her hand against the stone, her breath sharp, her body still weak from the fight. She turned to Elias, his silhouette tall in the glow of the fading beacon. He stood unmoving, his head tilted slightly upward, as if listening to something beyond the chamber. Kayla's voice broke the silence. "What did it do, Elias? What have you called here?" Elias's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, his tone steady and heavy. It sent a signal far across the stars. It told them humanity is alive. It told them it is time. Kayla's stomach twisted them. You mean humans? Elias nodded slow. Yes. Kayla shook her head, her hands trembling. She could not believe it, and yet she had seen too much. Not to her people, said humans, were only myths. Shadows burned away in history, but the myths now stood in front of her, flesh and blood and power, enough to shake the ground beneath her feet. Before she could speak further, the chamber shook again. Louder, dust rained from above cracks. Spreading through the stone ceiling, Elias's eyes snapped upward, his jaw tightening. They are coming. The enemy will throw everything at us before the call is answered. Kayla's heart hammered. She raised her sword, though her arms felt heavy. Wounds raw, she asked quietly. Can we hold? Elias looked at her, his face calm though his armor smoked and bled. If we must, we will. The stairwell above roared with sound, boots striking, metal engines humming. Kayla's throat dried as she realized an army was descending, not just hunters, not just soldiers, but something worse, a force meant to erase them. Both Elias stepped closer, his voice lower. This place cannot hold us forever. The ruins are awake, but they are not strong enough to protect us. We move. Now Kayla wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She nodded, her voice firm, where Elias walked to the far side of the chamber, placing his hand on another wall. The blue veins of light shifted, opening into a narrow passageway. Kayla followed. Close behind, the sound of the enemy closing in, echoing like thunder above them. The tunnel twisted deep into the earth, damp air pressing against them. Kayla's breath grew ragged each step. Agony, but she did not stop. She would not stop. Elias moved. Ahead, silent, steady, though his body bore wounds that would have killed another warrior. His presence pulled her forward like a current. After long silence, Kayla asked softly, Elias, you fight like no one I have ever seen. What are you really? He glanced, back his eyes sharp. Human. She swallowed, shaking her head. No, I have seen humans in stories, in carvings, in ruins, but none like you. You are more. He did not answer at first, then finally his voice low. Humans were forced to change, forced to become something. Stronger, something the galaxy could not break. Kayla's chest tightened stronger. She repeated almost in a whisper. Yes, Elias said. Because we had no choice. Before she could press further, the tunnel opened into another vast chamber, this one filled with towering machines half buried in stone, their surfaces glowing faintly. The air hummed with energy. Kayla's eyes widened. What is this? Elias looked around, his gaze sharp, a human outpost long forgotten, waiting for the signal. Kayla stepped closer to one of the machines, the surface smooth cold to her touch, yet alive. She whispered, These ruins cover the bones of your people's empire, don't they? Elias's jaw tightened. We did not build empires, we built warnings. Before Kayla could ask more, the chamber roared with sound. Soldiers poured in from tunnels above, armored figures dropping with weapons. Raised, Kayla's grip on her sword tightened her pulse. It quickened. Elias stepped forward without fear, his voice calm. Stay behind me. The first wave struck. Elias moved like a storm, his fists crushing armor, his boots breaking stone. Kayla fought beside him, her sword flashing, though every swing burned her. She refused to fall. The machines around them lit brighter, the hum growing into a deep roar as if feeding on the battle. Still the soldiers kept coming, wave after wave. Kayla staggered, a blade slicing across her arm. She gasped, dropping to one knee before the killing blow landed. Elias tore the soldier back, snapping him in two with his bare hands. Kayla looked up at him, breathless, his voice steady. Not yet. Kayla, stand. She forced herself up, pain screaming through her body. She lifted her sword again. Elias gave her the faintest nod. then turned back to the fight together. They pushed the enemy back, the chamber shaking with each clash. Then the ground split, a new figure stepping through tall armored black with red lines pulsing across. Its frame. Kayla's chest tightened, her stomach dropping, she whispered. An executioner. Elias's jaw tightened. Kayla, stay back. The executioner raised a massive blade, energy burning along its edge. It roared, a sound that shook the chamber Elias met. It head-on the clash of their strike, echoing like thundersparks flying across the walls. The force sent Kayla stumbling back, nearly knocking her to the ground. The fight between them was brutal, every strike tearing stone apart. Elias's fists struck, again and again, but the executioner did not fall, its blade slashing deep across his chest. Kayla screamed, Elias staggered, blood spraying, but he did not stop. He roared back, slamming his fist into the executioner's helmet, the metal cracking. Kayla's eyes filled with tears, fear and rage burning inside her. She ran forward, sword raised, striking the executioner's side. Sparks flew, the blade cut shallow, but it distracted the monster. Elias took the moment, seizing the enemy by the head with both hands. He twisted with a roar, the helmet snapping, the body collapsing in a heap. The chamber fell silent, broken only by the hum of the machines. Kayla stood, shaking, her sword falling from her hand, her eyes locked on Elias, blood dripping down his chest, his armor shattered, yet his eyes still burned like fire. She whispered, "You should be dead." Elias turned his head toward her, his voice low, "Maybe, but I am not." Kayla's breath shook. She felt both fear and awe pressing inside her. She realized this. Man was not simply a warrior. He was something more, something that defied the rules of life itself. Before she could speak further, the machines roared to life. The walls glowing, brighter beams of light shooting upward, the entire outpost awakening. Elias looked up, his voice calm. They heard the call, "The others are coming." Kayla's knees weakened, she whispered, "The others?" Elias nodded. Humanity. The ceiling cracked, light bursting through the stone, the sound of ships above filling the night. Kayla's eyes widened, her voice trembling. "Then it is true." Elias looked at her, his eyes fierce and steady. "Humanity has returned." Kayla could not move her mind, her world broken, yet rebuilt in an instant. She realized she was standing at the edge of something vast, something unstoppable. She whispered softly, "Then everything will change." Elias gave a faint nod, his voice heavy. "Yes, everything." And as the ruins shook with the arrival of ships above, Kayla felt the spark of fear twist into something else, belief. She gripped her sword again and whispered to herself, "And maybe that change is what the stars have always needed." The sky burned with light, the ground split with thunder. Kayla stood at the mouth of the ruins, her sword in her hand, though. Her grip shook above her. Hundreds of ships moved across the dark, their engines glowing, their shapes sharp against the stars. Kayla's chest rose and fell fast, her breath uneven. She could not believe her own eyes. The galaxy she had known had just died, and something new was being born. Elias stood beside her, his armor broken, his skin streaked with blood, his eyes calm, steady, his voice low. "They have come," Kayla whispered. "Humans." Elias gave a short nod. "Yes." The ships above shifted in perfect order, moving like one body, their engines roaring together. The sound made the earth tremble. Kayla pressed her hand to her chest, her mind spinning. This was real. This was happening. The myths had walked from the shadows and filled the sky. But before she could speak further, another roar split the air. From the horizon came the enemy, their warships rising black and red, their engines screaming, their guns blazing fire into the clouds. The ground quaked as the two fleets faced each other. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Kayla's stomach tightened, her voice shaking. "Elias, they know what you have done. They will not let this stand." Elias's gaze did not waver, his tone steady. "They cannot stop it." The first blasts lit the sky, fire tearing through the clouds. The battle began, ships colliding in storms of flame, the heavens filled with fire and smoke. Kyla watched wide-eyed, her knees weak. She whispered, "This is war." Elias turned to her, his voice firm. "No, this is the beginning. The ruins." Behind them shuddered machines, humming louder, the beacons still pulsing, the ground splitting. Kayla stumbled. Elias caught her, steadying her with one strong arm. His voice, calm, "Stay with me, Kayla, do not fall." "Now," she nodded, breath sharp, her mind trying to hold on to his words, though fear pressed heavy in her chest. The world was breaking around her, yet she stayed close to him because somehow he made her believe survival was still possible. From the broken valley, soldiers poured forward, the enemies. Ground forces, endless dark shapes, armored and armed, advancing through smoke and fire. Kayla raised her sword, though her arms trembled, her voice hoarse. "Elias, we cannot fight them all." Elias's eyes burned steady. "We do not need to fight them all. We only need to hold until they see us, until they remember." Kayla did not understand, but she trusted his words. The first wave of soldiers rushed, their weapons raised. Elias moved forward like a wall, his fists breaking steel, his voice silent, a presence louder than thunder. Kayla fought beside him, every strike of her blade tearing through armor, sparks flying, blood mixing with smoke. The ground became a storm of chaos, the air filled with screams and fire. Kayla's legs ached, her arms burned. But she did not fall, not while Elias stood, not while the beacon glowed. The machines in the ruins roared louder, brighter, as if feeding on their fight. Then the ground split wider, a giant figure rising from below, black metal glowing red. Kayla's stomach dropped, her voice, breaking another executioner. Elias's jaw tightened, his body straight, his voice steady. "Then we kill another." The monster charged, its blade burning the ground beneath its steps. Elias met it head-on, the clash shaking the valley. Kayla watched, her breath caught, her fear sharp. But Elias roared, striking again and again. Though his armor shattered, though his blood poured, he did not stop. He would not stop. Kayla's eyes filled with tears. She could not let him fight alone. She screamed, striking the executioner's leg with her sword, sparks bursting. The monster stumbled. Elias seized the opening, his fists slamming into its chest, the armor caving, the monster collapsing into fire. Kayla staggered, her chest heaving. Elias caught her, his voice low. "Good strike." She tried to speak, but the ground roared louder, ships falling from the sky, burning, crashing, the battle above raining fire across the land. Kayla's heart pounded, her voice shaking. "Elias, we cannot hold." Elias looked at her, his gaze sharp, steady. "You are wrong. We already have." Kayla frowned, confused. Then she heard it, a new sound through the chaos. Not enemy engines, not screams, but something else. Voices, hundreds of them, no thousands, rising across the comms. Across the stars, voices answering the beacon. Kayla's eyes widened, her voice trembling. "Elias, what is that?" He turned his head toward the sky, his voice low, humanity answering the call. Above, the ships moved, shifting into new patterns. Larger ships, arriving, their hulls glowing with human symbols, long thought lost. Kayla gasped, her chest tightening. Her people's history had said these symbols belonged to ghosts, but they burned now alive across the sky. The enemy faltered, their ships pulling back, their soldiers hesitating, their advance broken. Kayla saw fear in their movements. She whispered, "They are afraid." Elias nodded, slow. "Yes, they remember what we are." The battle above turned tides, human ships cutting through enemy lines with ruthless precision. The sky burning brighter, the ground rumbling. Kayla's throat ached, her heart raced. She whispered, "Elias, if this is true, if humanity has returned, what happens now?" He looked at her, his eyes fierce yet calm. "Everything changes. The galaxy will never be the same." Kayla felt tears on her cheeks, not only from fear but from awe, the weight of history breaking and remaking before her. She looked at him, her voice soft. "Then what about me? What am I in this?" Elias studied her for a moment, his Voice steady, you chose to stand. When you could have fallen, you are part of it now. Her breath caught her chest tight. She nodded, gripping her sword harder, though her body trembled. She would not let go. Not now, not ever. The enemy forces broke their retreat loud, their warships turning away, the ground forces fleeing into smoke, the ruins stood burning, glowing alive. Kyla and Elias stood among the wreckage, the beacon pulsing bright. Above them, the ships of humanity spreading across the stars. Kayla turned to him, her voice trembling. So it is true, the stars will wake. Elias's gaze stayed on the sky, his voice deep and steady. Yes, and when they wake, they will know humanity has returned. The light of the beacon bathed them both. Kayla lifted her face to it, her fear still inside her, but buried now beneath something stronger belief. The story of her people had ended, but another greater story had begun. And as the roar of human ships filled the night, Kayla whispered to herself words she had never thought she would say. Let the galaxy burn if it must. As long as we rise from the fire. Elias stood silent, tall, unbroken, his eyes locked on the stars, and in that moment, Kayla knew the truth. He was not simply a man, he was the spark of a fire that could never die, a fire that would spread through every corner of the galaxy. The human fire had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again.